Hello and welcome to today's WIEF thinkTALK Series 2021 third edition, titled Game On, Tapping into Gaming and Esports Businesses. So we will start with the highlights of the day. Now let's welcome Kamarul, Bahrin, Haron, who will be moderating this webinar. Kamarul is a journalist, editor, anchor, moderator, and trainer. He has been in the print, broadcasting as well as digital media industry of Malaysia for over 20 years. He was the editor-in-chief at Astro Awani, a Malaysian pay television news channel. Now, Kamarul is freelance. He is media consultancy, training and moderating services online, and he is based in Kuala Lumpur. Now, the floor is all yours, Kamarul.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's go. Game on. Game on, tapping into gaming and esports businesses. That's this edition of thinkTALK of the World Islamic Economic Forum, WIEF, and WIF Foundation has always been good to me all over the world. Discussion has been taking place, but this time in the era of pandemic, online, and how apt, because one of the industry that not only not regress, but thrives during the pandemic, especially from gaming and development perspective. But let's go into that more after I've introduced two key cool friends that I have today that are going to chat with me on this topic for the benefit of all of you out there. And closest to me, WYN Hazmer, Saudara WYN Hazmer, he has many hats, but suffice to know, he's the co-founder and CEO and also game director of Metronomic Jiran Berhad. And then before I go to my celebrated guest who's very far away, let us know WYN Hazmer through this particular skit. Please hit it.
Oh, do you know how to play the guitar?
What? Oh, nope.
No straight road indeed for this discussion today. I wish you guys could clap for WYN Hazmer, but WYN Hazmer is also gonna help me welcome our guest for today. In this country, we celebrate our guest very, very much. Chester King, he's the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of British Esports Association, but that's just one of the many hats. He has been in the real sports, physical sports. He's been in esports until now, and he's in the healthcare industry globally also. So I'm going to go straight to the topic. I'm going to wow you guys because I know some of your parents or your relatives would say gaming, esports, come on. But if you look at the numbers for this year, if I take Statista alone, if you Google, they're going to come up first on value. And if you look at the numbers, it's being said that esports for this year is going to be more than $1 billion US. But if I dice it over to the PC gaming market, that industry is said last year to be worth about $37 billion US. And move over, because most of you, don't hide. I know what you use your phone for. It's supposed to be for your studies and work, but no. Mobile gaming is $77 billion US. So you combine all this, it's more than $100 billion US. Where are we? Malaysia, Southeast Asia, this region, Asia, and the world in it. So my first question is straight away, Saudara WYN Hazmer, please chill down, okay? Because we're going to have to celebrate our guests. In our country, the guest comes first. So Chester, is gonna have to help
Yes.
us here. He already have his cap on, the esports cap. I know in football, Malaysia is way behind, anything from UK or Britain, but in esports, where is Britain now? Because I remember when I was at the News 24 Hours channel, I had a topic discussing about how gamification of education is actually happening in the UK. Minecraft, not the Minecraft totally for the play version, but for the education version, is actually integrated into the education system there. And there's no exam for that, if you can call it a paper, just get past level 1, then you move to level 2. So that's the new way that, somehow have been incorporated into the education system. But since you have been looking at this both personally and professionally now, yes, of course, you do it for the good of humankind, not really getting money for it, Chester. So we have to trust you on anything that you say. What is the state of esports for you in Britain and also the world right now?
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you very much. Really excited to be on this panel. And hello, everyone from the UK. So we were founded just over 5.5 years ago with authority from the British government. And we are a not-for-profit organization. And our main focus is grassroots up. And what we felt as an organization, and on our board, we have Lord Vasey, and he was a member of parliament, but he was the Minister of Culture and Digital, and he's a volunteer, and he helps us like a lot of our volunteers does. And I think the focus for us was to set good governance and standards, and we realized that esports is so passionate with the youth, with young people, that we used it as a hook to help people learn more maths, learn more English, or better English rather. And there's an expression that we have as the Trojan horse, so it's the hidden hook that brings people in. So yes, so you're right. We have in the UK esports qualifications that you get certificates and qualifications for year 12 and 13, so at high school level.
Okay.
And you can actually study full-time esports, but it's not about becoming a better gamer. Yeah. It's about learning transferable skills. So it's learning soft skills, it's learning about resilience, but you could also be learning about the business of esports or the agency of esports. Yeah. And then you go on to higher education. There's 6 universities in the UK where you can study esports as well. So we've, a bit like sports being very attractive to people, we've used esports in the same way. And we're starting our 2nd year at high school level. And then globally, we're selling it with Pearson, who are a big esports provider. And as an association, we help write the content because, as you know, every day, every week, every month, esports is evolving. And that's why it's so passionate with young people, because it's a live subject.
Fast moving,
Exactly. So we've been very lucky, and, we thankfully have had an incredible COVID experience because people, and parents in particular, have been spending more time with their children, and they, lunch at dinner, they're going, well, what have you been doing? We go, well, I've been gaming. Well, what games have you been playing? Tell me about it. So there's been a better understanding over the last 18 months. And for me, just to be very pedantic, because I am very pedantic, the world of, our definition of esports is organized competitive video gaming. So this is always human versus human. This is always trying to beat someone else or another group. And it's not about beating a computer. So, we've had a great support, not financially from the government, but from, just understanding how great an activity and how inclusive an activity esports is.
Chester, before I go to one husband, he's raring to go. His hands are clapped and he's, just going to spew like lava version of the gaming lava to me. But I had to ask you that question first because, the WIEF would kill me if I don't, put that decorum in. But man to man, father to father, I mean, this pandemic is unprecedented. Who can imagine that human beings have to stay indoors almost 24 hours a day? Especially if you're not a frontliner. Imagine the impact of that to young people who have so much energy, their hormones are racing more than their minds, so they have got nowhere to burn that energy. So most of that energy, and statistics has proven this, the amount of traffic online, on the internet, digitally, I mean, astoundingly, look at the electricity bill, even if you don't trust the internet data. So as a father, when I went through the interviews you had before on YouTube and stuff, I mean, I never think that in your household, it was ever an issue that the young ones in your household could, adopt esports and just go into it. But sadly, that's not the case the world over. So can you give us that perspective as a father?
Yeah, so I'm a father of three. I've got a son and two daughters, and I have a massive issue about social media. I think it's very negative. I have an issue about passive media. I think there's a time and a place, but what I like about esports is it's an active media. You're really improving your brain. You're trying to outdo, as I say, another human. It's like a modern version of chess, right? But it's more exciting. And I think, I'm not knocking chess at all. I think chess is very important as a game. It's just that this esports is an involvement. And I think, hopefully we'll talk about diversity and about how I think, we want to, chess is very male, and, esports traditionally in gaming has become quite male, but I think there's opportunities for us to improve diversity. So categorically from day one, once I understood, how the benefits of competing and, the socialization while you're playing esports, and the fact that you're talking to your friends, even though they can be in a different building, but you're trying to achieve something together as a team, the bonding is incredible. And during COVID, we were the only after-school club that was happening nationally in the UK.
Wow.
Even though some schools were shut, because they were participating. So this month we held our live student championships for Rocket League, League of Legends, and Overwatch, which we've been doing throughout the whole year from people's bedrooms, homes, but they came to a live finals on the 3rd of July. So parents really understood that they, as you say, they want to stay social, they want to stay competitive, and esports has been really well received in the UK by sport and parents as well.
Yeah. Well, one husband, at least I know League of Legends, not the other two, but never mind. Now I know No Straight Road. Okay.
Hey, thanks.
I tried Final Fantasy, but I'm going to ask, after this, I'm going to ask you for the cheat codes, surely you got contact.
Sorry, there are none, but go ahead.
Okay. That's what I asked Chester, but for you, because, you could have chosen to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, all the main careers that many, if not the majority parents in Malaysia would have wanted their kids to be since 80s, 90s, early 2000, right? But no, it isn't. You choose to go this way, and I'm sure you might not want to acknowledge it, but you're one of the real frontliner, frontier person for esports and game development in this country. I've been a journalist since the early 90s.
Okay.
I picked it up since then, So that gives you the locus standi to answer this question. I mean, the value of money globally speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But can we once and for all really allay the fear? Like Chester said, if it's an organized thing, it's strategic, it's well looked after, there's ethics, code of conducts and laws. It's really a healthy industry and a healthy vocation. Not just as a player, but as a developer or anybody that works anything within that supply chain of PC gaming, mobile gaming, or esports. It's really worth it because it's pandemic proof. Over to you.
Oh, that's a very, very good question. And thanks for having me, everyone. Hello. Hello from Sri Kembangan, Malaysia. To answer the question, so I chose this line because I've always wanted to be an entertainer, basically. So I always think of video games as something that I think Chester mentioned as, the aspect of humanity is there, Like when you create a game, for example, when you think about how to entertain, there are a lot of facets of psychology that you have to look into, right? People view entertainment in this particular way. When they play the game, when is the fun factor kicking in and all that. So all that is actually something that's very, very human. So although people keep associating video games to human versus AI, for example, back in the 90s and the 2000 era, it is still something very, very human because you have to make the code. The person is making the code, the person is entertaining. The other person is actually also human, right? And to answer your question about ethics and all that, I feel the video game industry has always been there for quite a while, right? And I think the problem with the association with, the lack of ethics and health and all that stuff is due to two things. Number one is how the kids are playing the game and how parents are allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
Right. It's similar to social media. When you look at social media as an empty shell, it's actually not it's not harmful.
Correct.
Right. But social media makes people be more transparent with themselves, but it will also bring the evil parts of them, like wanting to show off, bad mouthing other people, and that's where all the negativity is coming in. So video games is all about the holder. It's all about the person playing the game, right? And I think parents should know this, and I feel that parents are getting more aware of this. And that goes to my second point, which is something that Chester has touched upon earlier, which is the organizers themselves, the developers. So we as developers, we also have the responsibility to tell kids and tell parents that the video game industry is actually healthy. We're not doing that correctly if we are forcing our employees to go overtime, for example, or if we include some gambling elements in the game. Like, in Japan, it's a very popular thing called gacha, right? Or loot box in the Western world. So yeah, that kind of association, parents keep associating that with kids using my own money without my permission, that kind of thing. And it enables that gambling habit and all that. So it is also in the hands of the developer. And that's the reason why I created Metronomic in the first place as well. So Metronomic is a company where we, we care about the rhythm of lifestyle. So that means no overwork and all that. And we know that kids are playing our game, so we want to make sure that it has a good message and all that. So, and I know that a lot of game companies out there are also doing it. Problem is that the game companies that are not doing that, they are doing overwork, they have very, very horrible ethics. Like there's one certain game company, very big company recently that's being under fire and going to court as of now. Starting with B. But anyway, so because of they are shouting louder than all of us combined, and I think that's where the horrible association comes in.
So the one, before I talk about money coming in, not only sponsors, but people who really look at this industry as some place to put their money and they can invest in it and they can make returns. You have invested in it. I think you put everything in Metronomic. That's like your future up there, not just
that's correct.
Mine and soul, but everything, every single cent that you can afford, you put it. So how has that been for you?
Wow, it's been great. Seriously, I obviously at first I was very worried because I was in a comfortable life, right? I was working in Square Enix for around 8 years, getting a reasonable salary, living in Tokyo, right? People say, it's the otaku's paradise, which is nerd's paradise, right? And I'm a nerd myself, I'm a geek. So when Chester said chess is not exciting, I totally disagree with him. Because there's a lot of clawing as well in chess. But anyway, let's not go there. The thing is, when I opened Metronomic, it opened my eyes to something that's very new, which is I worked with veterans a lot in Square Enix. But working with fresh minds is something totally different. It opened doors to, it opened my mind a lot, right? To new opportunities and all that. Because our company consists of 80% fresh graduates or newcomers, right? We also have an accountant who makes 3D environment for us, so totally no game industry experience and all that. So yeah, it was really, really worth it. And, looking at the amount of money that's being put into, the money that we get from game revenue, right? As you mentioned, there's billions of dollars are getting involved at the moment. I mean, video game industry has overtaken the Hollywood industry since 2008 or something like that. Yeah. So the problem is how much of that pie are we getting, right? In Malaysia, I'm talking about Malaysia currently.
Correct.
Yeah, and and whether our parents, whether the parents here and whether the people here are very alert about how important esports is. As Chester said, it does encourage, relationships, humanity. And then and also one more thing I think we're going to touch later, but we have the women's version of some sports,
Yes.
you know, and people do justify it as it being, you know, because it's a difference in strength,
Yeah.
right? But
Okay.
esports, you don't need to do that, right?
Correct.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we can have more inclusivity
Yeah.
in that sense. And sometimes, you know, nowadays we even have things called VTubers, right?
Yes.
Virtual YouTubers, where they don't
Correct.
need to show themselves,
Correct.
right? So people do not just evaluate based on looks
Yes.
and all this. So yeah,
I'm thinking of doing that and having a persona of a 19-year-old, but don't tell anyone.
as long as you don't do bad things, it's okay.
Yeah. For the benefit, you know, we've got a whole slew of diversity of elements in our audience watching this right now.
Mm.
So just for them, you know, for those who are like me, very old, Chester still young. So when you say Square Enix is the company that, you know, so the famous brand would be Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy, Dragon
Yeah.
Quest,
Yeah.
near Kingdom Hearts
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
So in short,
Mm.
what one is telling us that he worked with the best of the best in the world, and finally when he's bored, came
Yes.
back here, and lucky for us, so he, you know, imparts some
Thank you.
skills and technology. But that's why I'm going to go back to Chester with. Chester, let's go to that boring side, which is money and investment for a bit. After that, I want to move to diversity. What kind of figures are we looking at? Because so far, when I Google around, a lot of tournaments, for example, for esports, they look at sponsorship for the reward money and stuff. But maybe you can help us understand that the growth is actually more and beyond that, where people are really investing, you know, making the network and connection, and to slowly, if not surely, build, you know, sustainable tournaments or competition, not just within a national border, but across borders, and even at the global level. You know, we come to whether it should be an Olympic sports later, but I think esports is strong enough to really have like what FIFA has for World Cup football, what IOC have for Olympic. I think esports is going to be even bigger than both of them combined. So, but over to you. Please salivate us with the amount of investment and the work being put upon to build this.
Okay, so if you break down, there's kind of like 30 different recognized esports, and obviously it does vary by continent, by country. And at the moment, on a business point of view, you've got two publishers that, in my opinion, have made a very positive mood for sustainability around esports and investments. And that's the franchise team model. So Activision Blizzard, who own Call of Duty and Overwatch, sold 20 franchises for Overwatch and 12 franchises for Call of Duty. So this was people buying in for a long-term franchise, like an American football team, like the NFL, where you can't be relegated. So you play in a world league, so the Call of Duty League and the Overwatch League. And I put together the UK's franchise, which is called the London Royal Ravens, and I'm a small shareholder of that. And the reason why I personally invested in that is because of the sustainability around a franchise model. So the model is the publisher and the team owners share revenue that come in, which is, as you say, a sponsorship is one thing, but also media rights, and then obviously going on to the live events. So last year we ran in the UK the biggest live event in the UK, which was in the Copper Box, which was the Olympic Park from 2012, our Olympics in 2012. And the model on that is you get brands like YouTube who have bought a 3-year media rights deal to stream the content. They're not charging for it. They're just buying the content, like Netflix are, like Facebook, like Apple. It's all about the content. So by having live events, one, there's an element of there's no latency or ping rate. So that's good for a player that you know you're on a level playing field. But also there is a buzz of it, and each title has a different atmosphere. So for example, Call of Duty, which is a big game over here in the West, you know, it's done $20 billion in revenue over the years. It's, apart from the Marvel films, it's the biggest second biggest franchise in the world. You know, Star Wars, I think collectively has done 9 billion. Call of Duty has done 20 billion. Right. So just get an idea. Harry Potter is like 5 billion. Yeah, all these. It's a Goliath. And what they did in 2019 was create this franchise model, which I think personally is a very solid investment, because you know you can't get relegated. In the other esports titles, the publishers all do a very good job, and they own the IP and they control the IP. And this is a really interesting point that distinguishes esports to sport. So let's say us three wanted to put on a tennis tournament or a football tournament. We don't need anyone's permission. To put on a commercialized esports event, you need a license agreement from the publisher. And they're very protective. And why wouldn't they be? They've invested a huge amount of money into their brand. So what I like about it is there's a control element about standards and code of conduct and everything like that, and player welfare. So what you're seeing is esports, even though it's competitive gaming's been around for decades, the esports element has only been very recently got kind of more professional. And everyone starts comparing us to football or soccer. We're like, football and soccer is over 100 years old. You know, the Premier League has been around for decades. Yeah. Esports is just starting. So if you were investing in a team, and what I've done is I've invested in two teams personally. One is the Call of Duty franchise, and the other one is a team called Resolve in the UK, which is a League of Legends team, and we're in the NLC, but we just agreed to deal with a Formula One team with Williams F1. Wow. To do a joint venture where we're combining sport and esports together. And you said you didn't know what Rocket League was, but so 75 million people play Rocket League. It's 3 versus 3. And last year in Tokyo for the Olympics, they were going to do that. So it's a huge game. This side, obviously, it's not so big on your side. So that's, you know, investing in teams, but also, as I say, the revenue that's coming down. You know, the media deal with YouTube was a huge amount for a 3-year deal for Call of Duty League and the Overwatch League. And then with live events, obviously, you know, COVID did have an impact. We were meant to have done 2 events last year and we only did 1, and everything went online. But that shows the resilience of esports. And actually, you know, apart from people not physically being able to get to events, you know, revenue for esports, as you know, and, you know, look at the market cap of Tencent, you know, they went up almost double. I think they're under 800 billion now as a company. One thing I just wanted to say about esports, and one thing that we advocate in the industry, is it's about a balanced life. And one thing that parents have accepted, and they don't like it, but to be a better gamer, you have to be physically fitter. So most of the pro gamers advocate eat well, sleep well, look after your eyes, you know, blink, you know, don't just focus on the camera all the time, and be physically fitter. So what I like about this industry, the esports industry, is you've got from pro down, pros saying, kids, don't just game all the time. You won't get better. There's a degree of it type thing. So I think there's a huge amount of duty of care in our industry. Obviously, there are extremes examples, and you can be close on that. So as an investment in sponsors and brand, and what you want is people outside esports investing. So if you look, Mercedes, you know, are a big sponsor now of esports. Brands are coming in because they're realizing they can target the youth, they can target the demographic, and you're promoting something that's very passionate to them. So I'm really excited about the investment that's needed to go into esports, because the more competitions we have, the opportunities of creating heroes. And we've talked about offline about, you know, we all need heroes in every industry to inspire children or anyone. And what I like about our industry is that because it's so inclusive, anyone can be a good gamer. You know, when I say, you know, anyone, you know, obviously like talent, you know, but there's no barrier if you're a girl, there's no barrier if you're in a wheelchair. It's very inclusive, right? And I think this is where I'm very happy. You know, I work in healthcare and I work in esports, and I sleep well at night because I'm not selling or creating anything that's bad for you. I'm trying to make people happy.
Chester, you know, they say now is a market that is a bit more flush with cash. Like if you're into equity investment, stock market, most of the market in Asia is a bit lackluster. Growth and money is flooding to the US. If you're looking at many other sectors because of the pandemic, so there is actually capital around moving, waiting to be invested. So what would your advice be for people in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, these parts of the world? We might not be as advanced and developed in terms of charting all this investment and growth of esports, like maybe UK, Europe, and the US. So, but that might be an advantage because, you know, it's still at an early stage where you could really set important things around and really ensure that it's a healthy growth?
Yeah, so we're again wearing a different hat. We actually are developing a niche esports fund, which we haven't talked about. There are a lot of people in the esports industry that have got incredible ideas with a lot of passion, but they haven't got the resource, and there aren't people who understand it. So traditional VCs, traditional people don't understand it. From an investment point of view, if you're into liquid investments or public listed investments, you would look at the publishers, you look at the hardware manufacturers, you'd look at Razer, Logitech, HyperX, Activision Blizzard, Tencent. I mean, just to track what their growth is. And, as we discussed, the gaming industry is bigger than TV, music, film put together, and gaming will become part of your life. And as long as we educate people about the right games, and that, there are certain games that I have an issue with, which aren't esports, but, thankfully, not on this, we haven't discussed them on this call, which I think morally aren't, right. And, it's funny, I have a 4-year-old and she talks to Alexa. So we have Alexa over here. I don't know if you have Alexa over there.
Yeah.
But with Alexa, when she goes, music or turn the volume up, there's no please or thank you. I think we should be educating our children to say that and reward that, because the problem is she then turns to me or my wife and goes, food. There's no, there's no element of the soft skills. So I think we've all got a part to play, and I'm very lucky that I'm within this industry, and gaming has been hugely beneficial for a lot of people, but everyone's been almost slightly embarrassed to admit it. I think sport and gaming and esports are incredibly positive things in our lives, because it's creative.
I'm not going to doubt that. I might even be a champion supporter of that. Saudara Wan Hazmer, let's entice Chester to have a small investment, quote unquote, as he put it, into an initiative in Malaysia. But I want to jump straight to inclusivity, because what Chester said about Alexa and some element about esports that's not healthy. When we played games early on, it was more of the console type, or even at a big machine at the arcade. That was the 80s and later on 90s, before internet in the mid 90s in Malaysia really boomed. One thing that even from there, that might have something to say about the elder generation looking at it a bit more suspect than the younger generation, is that you kill people who look like you. They are the antagonists from a creative standpoint of these games. They sound like us, they look more Asian than they are white people, and they're always the bad people, So then PC gaming started, and more proliferation of those kind of games. So having our own creatives coming from this side of the world, I think is crucial. Early on, the multimedia super corridor had that vision under creative content. We invested a lot into animation and stuff like that, even possible gaming. So now that you are doing games yourself, No Straight Road and stuff like that, you've done for others like Final Fantasy. How do you see that element of inclusivity? Because mobile gaming, for example, Asia might beat the West hands down, moving on, because our mobile phone penetration per population is one person might have up until 2 or 3 phones inside of the world. But what about that representation? It cannot be like movies and Hollywood. For the esports and video game, it got to be a bit more level playing field from the creative side. Over to you.
Right. So I think the problem with video games, I guess, when it comes to inclusivity, is that the big giants are usually the Japanese, UK and US, right? And it doesn't help that UK is also looking up to Western cultures, Western values. So a lot of the old Japanese RPGs are based on, Western medieval culture, right?
The Japanese are also looking.
The Japanese are also looking. So, but because of a lot of the transparency that's happening lately, with all the, equality, and then, people are more open. So one thing I like about social media, there might be negativity, but at least people are very transparent now. So, when their boss is being racist, for example, they will actually say it out loud. So putting them on the spot and all this. So, I think the brainwashing that has happened in the 90s and 2000s might have affected some of us, right? For example, as a Malaysian, right? So this is a real story, by the way. When we came up with No Straight Roads, we insisted that the voice actors maintain their accent. Okay. And what happened was almost more than half of the team were against it when they heard it.
Wow.
Yeah, because they think that
It's not
local
syllable.
means low quality. So in Malaysia, we used to have this term, right? Where when we say something is local, that means the quality is low.
Yeah.
That Milo is so local, for example, right? So
Yeah.
it feels very, so we have this association where whatever the Japanese and Western people are making, they are way better quality. They have, high quality. And I think that mindset has to be removed before we can have all this inclusivity, I feel.
Having said that,
Yep.
I remember when I was in news of how Rovio, for example, being the birds being angry, and it saved a whole company and hundreds of people from unemployment.
Yes.
They were not making money. Many of the games were not making it, but that one title, boom, like forever. So
man.
This is the point that I think all three of us have been discussing before this, that you cannot just judge what's at the cover, but if you look at it, if you respect the Avengers and their universe, you have to respect the fact that any publisher releasing any big top #1 world hit right now, they might have collection more than any Hollywood movies combined. Before this, it was Hollywood movies, but that is very far from somebody who's trying to make it, maybe never going to Japan before this, suddenly wanting from Sri Kembangan to publish a title. Do we go the Rovio way and hope to hit it somewhere, or do we do what you do? I mean, I get balancing the inequality and diversity, but you've got to have more players in to have that diversity.
Yeah, right.
How viable is that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I would encourage everyone in this world, and especially people who want to develop video games, to step out of their comfort zone, for sure. For me, this is just I've always believed that a good game designer designs less games and experiences life more.
Right? Why is it that 80% of your crew are fresh from uni and stuff?
Right, and the reason is very simple, because first of all, I feel that Malaysia has a lot of talent. It's just that the talent pool does not have faith in the game industry, or does not even know that the game industry exists.
So you want a white cloth, that hasn't been contaminated.
Exactly. I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm a very, very contaminated dirty cloth. Yes.
No. Because when I was in the founding team of Astro Awani, we did the same. Less than 20% were all like me. The rest were fresh graduate, or at the most 1 year with other institutions. I get what he's doing. I'll come back to that. I want to link that to Chester. Chester, how crucial is it? I'm sure you guys deliberate this, more often than not at British Esports. Inclusivity and diversity, because it's not only an issue in esports. In sports, we see EPL now taking the knee, just like in America. Some people are so angry about it, but it's been persisting, and we saw that at the Euro Championship, and I thought that was a very, very powerful symbol, because millions of people watched that, and I've seen that hopefully will continue at the Olympic, but for esports, since you're not as big as Olympics or Football World Cup yet, maybe starting earlier is better. What are the plans there?
Yeah. So I think there's two things that you're talking about. So one, from a duty of care, we have a code of conduct in our schools. So every player signs up to respect each other, that they're not sexist, they're not racist, and if they are caught online or during a match in the chat being abusive, then they're kind of red carded, and the teachers get involved in that. So again, a bit like I was saying about Alexa, we're trying, without being too authoritarian, is to say this is how you should treat people. And I know when you're young and you're emotional and your hormones are going, you shouldn't be abusive to anyone. That's zero tolerance. You just wouldn't do that face to face. So that's one thing. With regard to inclusivity and diversity, we have at the moment, we've kind of got 33% women participating, which is great. But what is kind of crazy, there's a game, as I said, Call of Duty in the UK. There's 2.5 million people that play it every day. 600,000 are women. But I don't think, we need to create an environment where they are more appreciated as well. And there is no barrier. This is what is kind of really exciting. The thing that was quite interesting for me during lockdown is we recruited a new lady who worked for us. And we had our first meeting, face-to-face meeting, after a year of her working for us. And we had it at one of our offices, and she sent an email to me, said, by the way, can I just check that I know that you're on a certain floor. Can I just check that you have a lift? Because I'm in a wheelchair. And we didn't know, because we interviewed her online. We only saw her face. We didn't know that she was in a wheelchair. Now, that has nothing to do with us choosing or anything like that. And I think it's fantastic. And she's very proud of the fact that she's had a disability and she's worked through and got a job. So we should be celebrating everyone in that. And just going on to the Euros, I worked at Wembley Stadium for 12 years. So I was there for the semi-final and I was there for the final when we lost, unfortunately. And it is a thing that we're very proud of, that we are trying to spread the message. And on every level, you shouldn't have a bias at all. You should be as open and as friendly as possible. And I think what we've felt in the UK anyway, that we had some good progress, but there is a small minority that it has certain views. And I think as I say, we've got an opportunity in esports of calling people out if they're wrong. We don't want haters. And I think brands have been very and publishers have been very quick. I mean, unfortunately, people have been going back, probably when they've been a teenager and may have said something silly online, and they've gone back 10 years and said, well, you said a silly comment 10 years ago. And there's a balance on what is a silly comment, right? It's abusive. But I think, if we start young, and we start with the young by saying this isn't appropriate behavior on social media or on whatever, then at least we're informing them of how to do it. But at the moment, there wasn't code of conduct. So our biggest charity is the NSPCC, which is the National Anti-Cruelty charity in the UK, and they've just written a parents' guide to help parents understand about what is terminology in esports, because there are ways that you can offend someone by using certain characters and chat, which parents probably aren't aware of as well. So look, we're really early stages. What I like is the fact that we're having these conversations now, because I think that didn't happen. And I think there are lessons that we can learn and values we can learn from sport and from any part of life and bring that in. And as long as people know that each game is age rated and a parent knows it's age rated. So for example, some of the games are 18 rated. If you go back in time, you wouldn't have rented an 18 rated film for your 11-year-old girl. Right. You just wouldn't have done it. So there's an element of us having these brilliant discussions, and thank you again for allowing me to talk on this panel, is just informing parents about, and teachers about this, that there is a choice and people just need to be more aware of it. And I always used to hate when parents go, oh, my kid's playing games all the time. And I go, oh, great, what video games? And they go, well, I don't know. And I'm like, wow, that's very disrespectful that you're not engaging enough to even find out which game they're playing. That you wouldn't allow your kid to watch 18-year-old movies or something. So anyway, we're making a step. It's step by step, but we're early days. And I think what is great is having this conversation, as I say.
And just to add to Chester's answer, if you don't mind. Well, by the way, I don't buy Alexa because I watch enough Black Mirror episodes to avoid that. But anyway, going to the inclusivity thing, I think we as developers, though, we have the responsibility to cater for that. So, I mean, wheelchair bound is one of them, but color blindness, for example, even blindness is also something that we are really looking into. A few of us developers are very aware of this. So if in case you all didn't know, The Last of Us Part 2, the very popular big game from Naughty Dog, it could be played by a blind person. So hopefully one day we developers will be more aware of this. In fact, in the Unreal Engine, one of the game engines used to make video games out there, There is even a very simple feature to switch on for color blindness, for different categories of color blindness as well.
Okay.
So yeah, these are the kind of things that we want to
Yes.
do as developers to increase more inclusivity. Yeah. Mm.
It's good that, you know, maybe 1/3 of Call of Duty players are female, according to Chester, but maybe the Asian ladies, they want more of the, you know, they can be forceful, but they still have cultural insight and that Eastern way of respecting people and doing things. So can you point us to games like that are coming and growing, or at least game developers that are wanting to have these new ideas where not everybody has to shoot people to death to prove your argument? For example, you can build things, you know, or a cross in between, maybe a cross from Minecraft to Call of Duty, for example, more Asian in
yeah. Something that I want to really highlight here is that sometimes making, let's say, for example, if you're making a movie or you're making an animation, sometimes it's much more difficult to get the point across because you need broadcasting rights in every country and all this. Whereas for video games, it's just sometimes a click of a button. Obviously, it's not that simple, but just a click of a button, then that's it. You upload to the entire world.
Okay.
Right. So as Asians, we have to be aware of what makes us special, right? And seriously, you don't have to spend much money, but you have to spend a lot of time though. But you don't have to spend money to make a game now.
All right.
Right. So whenever you have an idea and you know that you can come up with something unique, and you can't beat some of the big players out there in terms of tech, right?
Okay.
So why try to beat them at that game when you have your own unique properties like culture? Yeah, you know. So there are a lot of games that are doing this, and especially now that the indie game is booming. So it is not really related to esports because most of the indie games, you know, because esports requires network capabilities which require a bit of effort to make. But you know, there are a lot of indie games out there that where, you know, the person just started from, you know, it's a bit like a garage band.
Okay, cool. I'll DM you after this, you know.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So we're gonna reward those who have been, you know, listening in to us. You know, there are many other circus-like discussions happening around the world, but you know, they choose to listen to the more sedate, cool discussion like ours. So we're gonna reward them. One is Rashidi Yahya. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do we have a clear career path if any kids in Malaysia wants to make a career e-sport? For example, is there enough tournaments in Malaysia which cater for this? Let's take for example, FIFA. In Europe, football clubs have their professional FIFA players attached to the club, participating in tournaments with their club colors. In Malaysia, besides the usual FIFA tournament organizer, our football association does not participate in e-sport. The lack of support from established governing bodies may deter parents from encouraging their children to take up e-sport as a career.
So I guess I'll answer this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think if you want to be a player, like a gamer, a competitive gamer in esports, what you can do is you can sign up your child there are some esports centers out there. One of the most popular one is the APU Esports Academy. So they don't only teach, just like what Chester mentioned just now, it's not only just about, you know, playing the game and doing well. You know, it's all about also leadership, organization, all those, you know, management qualities as well. And then there's also, I think there's one person down there, Farhan Yun. We are undertaking the National Esports Development Program in the Q&A. So you can talk to Farhan as well about that. But one thing I want everyone to understand is that esports does not only need gamers. Esports also needs managers, accountants, and also developers who are going to make these games. You know, so most of the esports that's happening right now, they're made in other countries, not in Malaysia. And we do actually have the capacity to make video games for competitive purposes. We already have a game from Box Studios, for example, in Malaysia. It's a game called Examius. It's an FPS come strategy game. So yeah, that is it's niche, but it has its circle of esports gamers as well. Yeah.
Not all titles have to get $250 million straight away.
Exactly. So you can be a developer, you can be an accountant, you can be an event manager, and still be involved in esports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chester, please give us some sagely advice on that question.
So what's going to happen? And again, being pedantic on terminology. So if a video game has a sporting element, so like FIFA, right? what you're going to see is that within the IOC, and I sit on the Esports and Gaming Liaison Group when it was founded 3 years ago, is if a video game promotes the values of a sport from a governing body, then they call that a virtual sport, right? So Swift, for example, is indoor cycling, but with gamification. That, and I know we're going to come on to the Olympics later. Games like FIFA, my understanding is in America, there was a 20% uplift in girls' participation of physical football, soccer, because they played the video game, which is a brilliant, link there. So I think you're going to see, certain organization, as I said, of video games that are linked with certain values. So if there's sports, you've got sports governing bodies promoting that. There's certain franchise leagues, as I talked about. With regard to your, the question about, how can my son or child become a professional gamer? One, it depends on the game, right? There is careers that you can have if you're good. The one thing you need to understand as a parent, though, unlike I can say, hey, my son's going to play for England at football, he's a great left back. Well, it's very subjective until you see him on the pitch playing, right? If I said, oh, my daughter's a top Fortnite player, you can immediately tell straight away where she is in the world, right? So if your child says to you, I'm going to become a professional gamer, it's very easy to do an analysis to go, well, actually, you're not even in the top 1% in the world, without being too brutal. So I think it's quite easy to understand how good someone is, and there is going to be online coaching. There is standards coming out on that. So my answer to you is, I just reached out today. I wasn't aware that there is an Esports Malaysia tournament, but organization. But you just need to choose the right title. If, let's say, your child says, I love this title, and there's no competitions, well, he or she isn't going to make it in a career in that title type thing. So focus on the big titles to begin with is my advice.
At least I know Call of Duty. I've played it, but
you should play Rocket League. You should play Rocket League. Seriously,
I'm going to try No Straight Road first.
Okay, that's not esports, but thank you.
Whatever. Just let's tackle the elephant in the room right now, because one thing for sure, there's a lot of debate about esports and the Olympics, but for the last few days, there's an inclusion of new sports like skateboarding and 3-on-3 basketball. These are among the new additions to the Olympic sports because they are targeting younger audience, youngsters, teenagers. So that's an overlap, because esports is predominantly young people really passionate about it. And that's a point of interest that actually intersects on that particular point. But from your opinion, where would it go about this virtual sport, esports, and Olympics towards the future?
So, I mean, what's interesting, so in 2016, I went to Rio during the Olympics, and I did a 2-day esports event in British House with the government. And I was way too early. This is 5 years ago. And it was great. We had the best players around the world for Smash Brothers and Smite playing. But where I'm probably slightly different to maybe a lot of other countries is where under UK law, esports is not a sport. It is a game. And there's a huge distinction in my country. So I don't think, I think the Olympics is about sport. Esports is esports, right? So I've come from a slightly different view, whereas, like chess and bridge in our country is a game and not a sport. But in Poland, chess is a sport, so esports is a sport. So if you just put the argument about is esports a sport aside, what I get about the Olympics and what I would do if it was my choice is, as I say, if there's a game or a virtual sport that reinforces the values of the sport. So I think Swift is a really good example. So you're physically cycling, but there's an element of gamification. Who is going to win a Swift tournament? It's not a pro gamer, it's a pro cyclist, right? But what I do like, and what I can share that we're discussing around the Commonwealth Games, which is for the Commonwealth countries, is next year at Birmingham 2022, there will be an esports championships just before the main Commonwealth Games, but it's separate. It's not a medal event for the gold thing. But I know, for example, at the Asian Games in Hangzhou next September, esports is part of it, because in Asia, esports is sport. So I think there is a cultural difference. I think if you're promoting human competition and human, that element is good. It's like, and I'm not anti-chess, by the way, I'll just clarify that. but why wouldn't chess be in the Olympics, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I think there's a cultural thing, but I can definitely see in the future, virtual sports being involved in the Olympics.
Right.
I would challenge, and I'll give you a quick example. I know the current leaders in the IOC, the president, has a slight issue over FPS games, and he was asked, he said, I have a red line over certain esports, and one of the very senior man at Epic that owns Fortnite and owns Rocket League said, sir, why have you a red line over certain esports? And he said, I don't like it when you're playing a game where you're simulating death, trying to kill someone. And they said, with respect, you got a gold medal in fencing. Aren't you trying to stab the guy with the sword? And there was a moment in the room and everyone just sort of froze, went, oh, yeah. So, it's a virtual version. So I think the whole argument, does esports need the Olympics, or does the Olympics need esports, right? And I think that's a bigger question. And what we're trying to do in the Commonwealth Games is, let's have an esports tournament that's not part of the main Commonwealth Games, because then we're not having an argument about is it a sport, isn't it a sport, but let's recognize it's a fantastic tournament and game, and people are participating in that type of thing. So personally, just because of the UK law, it helps me out, because esports is not a sport, so there's no argument in my country. I don't report to the Minister of Sport, I report to the Minister of Digital.
Wow, that sounds cooler anyway, So one husband, make up your mind, you could be the, esports chef de mission to Birmingham.
Looking forward to that.
Unfortunately, time is really catching up, so I'm going to go rapid fire now and select questions. Helen Woon asks, what do you think about the impact of the pandemic on esports sponsorship? What are the challenges do you foresee in this? Justin, you want to take this?
Yeah, so sponsorship was actually very good, because obviously there was a lot more live events, and rather than waiting for live events to happen, sponsors could go, right, I want to run a tournament next week, and can you pop it up and can you do it? So actually it was very effective. The biggest challenge for sponsors and brand managers historically has been when they compare sport to esports. So we all know when the Euros are, we all know when the Olympics are, we all know when Wimbledon is. What traditionally was happening in esports is, well, when is the big esports tournament? So as a brand sponsor, you're going, well, I need to assign my budget for the year, but if I don't know when the esports events are, I can't give money to it. So as to be safe, I put it in sport. So I think that's changing. So I'm very positive about many more brands understanding esports and how targeted it can be get. So I'm feeling good about it.
Adam Azhar asks, since becoming a professional player in itself is difficult in esports, how could an average gamer like myself turn gaming into a solid and stable career? Not everyone could reach top 100 in Rocket League, League of Legends, or COD. I guess, can you still have wealth creation if you're not the super top? If you're not an EPL professional football player, could you still play in other ranking tournament and still make money out of it?
Not yet. It depends on the game, but as we talked about or was mentioned earlier, it's not just about being the gamer. You could make money being a coach. I mean, my Call of Duty team of 4 players has 13 people around the core team. So you have the coach, the analyst, the trainers, the nutritionist. So unfortunately, like being, if you're not in the EPL, I mean, I think Messi's on 30 million a year.
Yes.
Yeah. There are not many people like that, right? And in any elite sport, there are not people like that. But in time, that might evolve. But I would say, unfortunately, there's other opportunities to make money in esports if you're not at the elite level.
I'm gonna play Call of Duty again anyway. my friend Ibrahim adds to the point that Chester made. The percentage for gamers in 55 to 64 age group grew by 32%. You know, all these numbers are fine and good, but okay, let's go to another question before that. Josh Harding is asking, as fathers, how do you balance encouraging kids to playing games and esports versus curbing the addiction to gadgets?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've done a lot of research on this, and it's about, parents don't like screen time, but it's about educating your children on what is the best screen time. So we often get parents going, well, how long should my kids be gaming? And I go, well, look, in the old days, especially for someone like me, you'd come home from school, do your homework, have your dinner, and then you'd be sat in front of a TV for 90 minutes. Playing esports is better than that. So I would say, well, look, rather than your kid watching TV, let them game for the same amount of time. The addiction thing is really interesting. And there isn't an article ever written about esports addiction. It's more about gaming addiction. When you're playing, if there's 10 of you playing esports, 5 versus 5, it's hard just morally, for 10 guys to keep going. Whereas if you're playing against certain games where you're just playing against the computer, it is harder to do that. And if there's gambling and stuff like that. So it's something, as a parent, you need a duty of care. It's your responsibility as a parent to control your child and educate them. To me, it's about education rather than saying, this is good. You can get addicted to anything in life, right? Unfortunately. And you have people who are very addictive to certain things, and I've had personal experience of seeing people like that. It's just how you manage and do that. But if it's making them happy and it's they're sharing them with their friends, and especially during what's been happening in COVID. But I agree about the gadget thing. That's why it's important that our industry promotes a balanced lifestyle and things in moderation.
Correct. Phil Tran asks, what sort of player welfare control or tools have you seen? It feels like esports is very much a grind for aspiring players and professionals alike.
Sounds like a normal sport as well, right? You can grind running as well, right? So
just a funny story. So in 2019, I was at an event called E3 in LA, and it was in the room was a professional gamer and an Olympian. And I stood up and said my line about, we want to promote a balanced lifestyle. And they both said, balanced lifestyle. If you're an Olympian, you have zero balance. You're training. And the gamer said that. I think the challenge there is, when you become an elite sportsman and an elite gamer, the company or the organization looks after you. You have nutritionists, you have welfare. I think the challenge is for people who are aspiring. There's no one there giving them the right advice and stuff like that. So again, that's something that we as an industry needs to do to monitor that, because if you're trying to make it, who is giving you that advice? Whereas once you make it, actually the control of the elite players and the looking after the elite players is a lot better. So that you'll see more academy happening. So you have like a pro, the first team, and then you have an academy team, and you'll see more of that.
One Hazmer, for like talents in developing games, how do you look after them? Like, do they get pinched every few months from you? Is that competitive, or how do you go about it?
For us, it's more like because artists, creative people can be perfectionists, and they want to spend like 14 hours a day working on the stuff sometimes, So it is really my job to ensure that doesn't happen. So back when we had a physical office, I actually had a bell, like a school bell. So I would ring it at 7 p.m. Usually, to remind everyone to go back. And also, it is my job as a director of the game to also control expectations from the publisher as well, right? So I don't tell the publisher, okay, can. Yeah, definitely can. That's a very, very bad mindset to have.
All right.
I tell my publishers that, if we work in this amount of hours, we will not make the game ready. We will not get it ready. So, so the spacing out of the task is also my responsibility. On top of the other things like, getting them out to buy books at a bookstore and all this stuff.
Understood. Chester, as long as you're typing an answer for fun, you might as well answer it here. I noticed that each country region
I was replying to his answer.
Or grow their own respective esport gaming industry. It seems to be lacking of cross-country or regional collaborations to boost the growth of the esports industry. Is there any obstacle for such collaboration, or is there any plan to encourage more collaboration between countries or regions?
Yeah, so we're a member of the Global Esports Federation that was founded in 2019 and whose partner is Tencent, which is the biggest gaming company in the world. So they've got 100 national federations. I did send an email this morning to National Esports Malaysia because they're not a member yet. So it is already happening, and there's incredible collaborations. There's a huge group of volunteers helping around like wellness and just participation and everything. So yeah, so it is all happening, and half the people who helped set up the Global Esports Federation are involved with the Olympics IOC. So there's a shared value there.
So there are things being done, right?
Yeah.
You, Chewan, please take this for me. Yusuf Ismail asked, we talked about this a bit just now, let me see.
What are some ways
to increase the representation of different cultures?
Oh, this is my favorite subject. So, I mean, I care a lot about relevance in a video game. So, you know, whenever you want to put something very unique in a game, like, for example, your own culture and all that, you have to understand that there'll be Americans, Europe, so especially for video games. You know, animation, comics, sometimes it can be limited to a region. But video games, if you limit to a region, it's such a waste, right? Yeah, because the publishing is so easy. You have to ensure that you totally understand that a Japanese and American and British person would play the game, right?
Okay.
And for me, what's very, very important is that this is something that was mentioned by, oh my God, I forgot the author's name already. The name of the book is Story. Robert McKee. Yes, Robert McKee. So he said, what has to be local can be, you know, your culture, whatever, but the message has to be global, no matter what. So, for example, we can put in our culture of batik, congkak, and all that stuff.
Yep.
But if you just, so a very common, there are two common patterns in Malaysia that are very bad. Number one, they're too proud of their culture, meaning that if I were to put a congkak in the game, everyone will play it.
Yeah.
So that's bad. And the second one is also equally bad, which is I'm not proud enough of my culture. I'm very embarrassed. I better put something Japanese or Western there so people will play the game. So I don't believe in either of these. So the idea is to ensure that although you have a congkak, batik, whatever, hang tuah, whatever Malaysian historical stuff that you want to put inside the game, let's say, for example, if you top that up with a relationship between a parent and a child, right? That will be relevant to a lot of people. And then they will look into the game and see all these little details like culture and all that. And for me, the Japanese are super good at this.
Okay.
You know, they have a lot of famous animations now, right? By Studio Ghibli and all this as well. So they are very good. They are very good at this because they know how to put in something unique, but at the same time has some, appealing, how to say, like emotional relevance.
Can you imagine
to that? Yeah.
Can you imagine watching on Netflix Clash of the Titans for God knows how many episodes? Oh my God.
Right. Yeah, but you know, it's a very common tale of a very big corporation or a big government trying to topple.
We're gonna ask WIEF to do another session with deep dive into that. That's a proposition for you. That's a proposition for you. Farhan Yuns want to know, is one husband down for this? Down for what? He said they are undertaking National Esports Development Program, building our own National Esports Hub is one of the agenda, and that's what we are currently working on. They want to invite one husband to collaborate.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know whether I am the perfect candidate for esports because, you know, I'm developing games not for esports. But please involve Chester as well. We can benefit a lot from Chester's
because
experience.
I don't know, I only know Call of Duty. You don't want to invite me. Oh my God, never mind. All right, never mind. That's what I get from these people. Melanie Tan is asking, what are your comments on Blizzard being sued over frat boy culture and harassment on their employees, despite being a company that been promoting woke culture?
Well, it's funny. I landed yesterday. I've been in Africa for a week, and I didn't know any of this that's been going on. So I actually didn't hear any of it until last night. So of my experience of Activision Blizzard, they've been really supportive to war veterans and very positive. So I need to know more about what's happening. I know there's a big restructure going on anyway, so I can't really comment on it. My only experience of them has been very positive and inclusive. So
Okay.
I don't know enough yet.
Yeah, as for me, I read the court records. So yeah, I'm also, I've been looking up to Blizzard for a long time. I've been playing World of Warcraft and StarCraft and all that. But yeah, if whatever on their court records are true, then it is really, really devastating and disappointing. Yeah.
Right.
So if it's true though, but they are innocent until proven guilty. Right?
Let's wait until we have more information. We could discuss that. Ibrahim Patel asks, would we see the Olympics and other global sports event play out as virtual gamers event in the future, given challenges such as the pandemic implication of Tokyo Olympic? Could esports become the mainstream? What, in fact, to the point we have discussed earlier, what if we don't even have a physical stuff because of COVID or whatever other reasons, and virtual becomes the thing? Is that possible, Chester?
Yeah, so again, it's almost like everyone's trying to merge esports with the Olympics, and that for a lot of us in the industry, each publisher runs their own tournaments and their own structure. So I know it'd be good to get a gold medal, but again, repeating myself, esports is not, in my opinion, sport. I get the virtual sport thing. I think that's a great idea. So but there are challenges about doing international tournaments with ping rates. You can't have a country participating from Japan and England on a certain server if there's a lag rate. It's not right. So I can see virtual sports happening. I'm a bit old school. My uncle ran in 2 Olympics for Great Britain. He was the record holder for running. I don't think I could look him in the eye, not that he's around anymore, and say that this would be appropriate. I think we both have our space, but we don't need to merge, in my opinion, but I'm a bit old school in my views.
Just to add to that, right? I think the pandemic does affect the physicality of the event itself, right? And I think this would affect, how parents would see games, right? So I think parents, they see the importance of esports when they actually see a proper live event with people cheering and all that with the commentation, right? So the pandemic does prevent that from happening a bit. So that's a bit unfortunate.
We can only take one last question, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to combine the 2 next questions. One from Patricia James is, oh, well and good, gamers are associated with being sedentary and inactive. Okay, that one is Chester's one. And then the other is about, and I'm going to ad-lib it a bit. In this pandemic, we've seen how many families don't even own devices and tools to do e-learning. They don't even have broadband access. So, push comes to shove, how can we promote and encourage becoming a gamer or esports person? It's not just for the privilege. So one for one Hazmer, the other for Chester. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can wrap it up in one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, you're seeing an industry which promotes physical health as important as being a gamer. So, you can't play sport. In England, everyone says at night they should be playing sport. Well, you can't. There aren't enough facilities, and it's dark and it's dangerous. So, as I talk about esports being active media, you shouldn't compare esports as a conflict with sport. Esports as a conflict with passive media or social media. It's like a hobby thing. So you got to change your attitude. With regard to the digital divide, which is an issue, and we've seen that with education of people not having the right laptops during the COVID. What's interesting in the UK is the police and the NHS are setting up gaming hubs and facilities, which we're actually doing a lot of work with, to reach people who haven't had an opportunity to play with tech. And as you say about Messi and Ronaldo, we are working with stakeholders in the UK that care about youth, like we do, to encourage them to say, look, come in. So we're doing one with York Police Force to actually do exactly what you're saying. We've acknowledged that, and we're trying to resolve that.
Cool. Chewan, from the gaming perspective, if I'm a kid from Perlis, my hometown, Sawah Padi, I don't have any computers or broadband connection near me. How do I start from early on if I'm going to be left behind? So by the time I get to KL, other people are way more skilled than I am. So what hope do I have to join?
Okay, so for me, I think I think now, because I left I left Malaysia for Japan like in 2008. So I see the before after like 2017 I came back, right? The digital divide is definitely getting less. So I still see people in my my parents' hometown, Besut, Terengganu. They are playing on their handphones, playing PUBG and all that. So you know, I think the digital divide is not as bad anymore. But let's say, for example, I think for games, right, it doesn't have to be limited to digital. You know, for sure you might be left behind in terms of skills in for programming, you know, or creating assets and all that stuff. But for example, even creating a board game would also encourage that, you know, game design skill and all that. And creating board games is also not easy. It's quite difficult as well.
As long as you have the dream, keep to it.
Exactly.
Until one day you go to Sri Kembangan, meet one guy from Besut.
I wonder who that is. Yeah.
You know, all these big publishers, they need new ideas and new innovations, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, nowadays, especially the indie gaming community, we are sick of recycling ideas.
Yes.
You know, so someone from Perlis will definitely come up with a great idea and fresh idea that's not being used in video games.
So, give me one sentence, sum up this whole thing that we have discussed. If you were talking to a young person right now, what's that one sentence you would give? Embrace your uniqueness. Chester?
Playing esports is better than not playing esports.
Nice.
I'm going to look at the two titles that you mentioned that I haven't played yet. So
Rocket League, it's amazing.
I know. I'm going to email you.
Exactly.
But League of Legends I've discussed before, not played. So the first thing to do is upgrade my computer. I'm going to do more odd jobs to do that. Thank you so much to Chester King. Clap your hands wherever, you know, switch on and off. Thank you.
A lot of great information, man, from Chester. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's goodbye
I love
for
your
now.
passion, guys.
It's goodbye for now. But Chester, I promise you, we're going to bug you and we're going to be with you in making this world a better place, especially from an esport and young people's perspective, because we need to facilitate that. Thank you so much to WIEF, World Islamic Economic Forum. This is a Think Talk and Game On. For now, game off. See you again. Thank you. Good night. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. That is all the time we have for today's session. Now, we truly hope that you have gained valuable input and will be beneficial to you all. Now, thank you again for everybody for being here today and making this webinar successful. Now, on behalf of WIEF Foundation, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and have a great day ahead.